The first 100K is the hardest. That's what I want to talk about today. So a guy named Charlie Munger is attributed with this quote, that your first 100,000 is your hardest to save, especially from a point of standing still and with no seed money. He compares building wealth to being like a snowball that rolls downhill. So I can concur with this quote. I will attest that our first $100,000 that we saved was the hardest. And with that, it's gotten easier. But I also want to reverse engineer this and share more about our personal journey, because the fact is your first 10,000 is the hardest 10,000. The first 1,000 you save is the hardest 1,000 you save. The first $100 you save, that's the hardest $100. So the first 100K is the hardest. There's reasons they use that quote particularly with building great wealth, but I want to break this down and just talk about saving and how saving applies to building wealth, just in these incremental steps that open doors to new levels. For us, as an example, it took us about 2 to 3 years to save our first $100,000 cash in the bank. The second 100,000 definitely came faster. Just another example, we've taken the winter off working. We've been working on our home renovation and pursuing some other things, taking a season of rest, though it hasn't been as restful as we would have liked. The last contract we had with our business netted us about $75,000 profit for a 2-week period. We went from taking 100,000, let's say, in previous years, that taking 2 or 3 years, the second 100,000 a whole lot faster, and then, as a brief example, in 2 weeks making $75,000 and profiting from that. The fact is, though, I don't want to brag about that. What I want to do is explain that same principle applies all the way back to that first $100 that you put in the bank or that you save and squirrel away. In our early years being married, it's been about 10 years. When I met my husband, he was coming out of a really difficult season in his life. He had gone through bankruptcy, lost a job, lost investment properties, a side business, and had gone through a divorce. He was just coming out of this as a new man. I, on the other hand, had been struggling. I had sold a business in Arizona, ended up in Bend, Oregon. That's where we met, and really had floundered for the next few years trying to build my speaking and consulting business. It really was struggling in those early years. And so when we met, we actually really had no income to speak of. We had no steady income, we were building basically 3 businesses. We were living hand to mouth. My husband got injured in that first year, and it was a struggle. The fact is, it was difficult. I just remember that there was nothing to speak of as far as even beginning to feel like we could save any money. It was stressful. There was anxiety. There was discord. We fought so much. It was so difficult. There was one issue in my marriage, and that was that my husband, it seemed like wherever he went, he left change behind. Pennies, nickels, dimes, annoying change. It would fall out of his pockets in the couch. He left it in the bathroom, in the bed, in the truck. It seemed like anywhere he went, he was leaving money. And I was annoyed because he didn't immediately turn around and pick it up. And he had some back pain at the time. I thought sometimes he was just too lazy. He was dog tired from working. I was dog tired from being pregnant and figuring all that out. And we had a newborn baby. So this was actually into our second year. So we had already been married, had the pregnancy, and we had the baby after that first year. So this was into the second year that I started doing this after a year of being annoyed by it. I finally embraced this idea that I've been living by, a maxim for years that I coined, which is that your biggest problem is your greatest opportunity. And finally being so disgruntled with this, it was not working. I probably had a pissy mood trying to get him to pick his money up and be respectful. Finally, I just knew I had to go about a different route, and we needed to save. He was doing what he could. I just finally realized I needed to take this pain point, and maybe this was our way out. And so I started picking up his change, and I squirreled that change away, and I saved it, and I saved, and I saved, and really tried to change my attitude. Instead of being pissy, I tried to pray and be positive and be more encouraging in regard to this stuff with my husband. Amazingly enough, about a year, not even a year later after saving this, it was probably about 10 months, we had an opportunity to move and rent a small little house. I always thought of it as like an old farmhouse. And there was a lot of reasons it would be a great move. We could save $400 a month in rent. It had 2 little bedrooms, so we had room for the baby that we had at the time. And we were going to save probably over $100 a month in gas. And we went, checked the house. We were given total favor. They were happy to rent to us and no one else. And suddenly the guys started talking about a deposit, and my husband pulled me aside and he was like, we don't have enough for the deposit. It was pretty inexpensive. It wasn't even 1 month's rent for the deposit, which was in itself an incredible opportunity. As it was, I think we only needed to have $400 or $500. Maybe it was $450 or $500 for the deposit. I want to say $450. And by then I had saved something like $600. My husband was stricken by the fact that we had this incredible opportunity and we didn't have a deposit. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, we do. And I told him I'd been saving this money, and I had accelerated that savings because I'd been given some birthday money and some Christmas money by some family. And so I think a couple $100 I'd thrown into that mix that had accelerated, but I had picked up probably $300 or $400 and change that year. And what was amazing is when we used that money to make that shift, that $600 that we had saved, we didn't even have to use all of it, but suddenly that deposit, which we were going to get back, which I figured was still like in the bank in one sense, it was still saved, we were going to be able to make back $400 or more plus gas, let's say $500 a month save by moving into this house. By saving that first $500, it took a year to do that, let's say, and suddenly we could save $500 every month moving forward. And so this principle applies, that snowball principle applies. I don't know what your situation is. You might be a single mom with a couple kids. You might be a married couple struggling with financial debt, hospital bills, different things like that. You might be a widow struggling to make ends meet with inflation. There is an opportunity for you. And if you want to go to the next level, one of the biggest things to build wealth is to start by saving. And so you might not be ready to be thinking about the 100K, but wherever you're at, are you thinking about the 10K? Are you thinking about the 1K? Are you thinking about the 100? And do whatever it takes to save. I mean, not do whatever it takes, but within reason, do whatever it takes to save that, to protect that, and begin to build that. That is one of the principles for building wealth. There's many others. I'll get into things like giving and investing and spending. But this is key. And if you have not begun to master this, then start, even if it's with the pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. And if you're in Canada, the loonies and toonies. I don't know what other change there is, in your part of the world, wherever you are, but begin to save whatever change, if you have to pick it up on the street or pick it up after other people, and you'll be amazed at the doors that can open by doing that. So thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Please like and subscribe. This is a new YouTube channel, and every little bit has its weight in gold right now. So thank you. I appreciate you, and it's my joy to share this with you. I'll see you next time.